Hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Kaiz and I'm a software engineer here at Sigma Labs. So today I'm just going to be sharing about my journey and also share you guys a bit of tips and tricks that I learned along the way so you can have a similar idea on your progress as well. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So be a programmer 101, right? So basically, this is about my journey and how I started because this was very long time ago. Okay, so you will be seeing some old vibes here and there. So bear with me. Okay, so let's go. And yeah, so this is just gonna be a table of contents. So I'm gonna introduce first, and then what I do here at Sigma Labs and then my journey, and as well as the hard parts of learning how to code by myself, right? And also, I'm going to be doing an algorithm demo as well. And finally, the end goals. Okay. So yeah, let's go. So introduction. So the introduction is going to be, who am I? So my name is Kaiz, and I'm a software engineer and a tech lead at Sigma Lab. And yeah, so basically, I like to swim, and I'm a cat person as well. And at the end of the slide, you will also see a picture of my cat, which yeah, later on I'll show you. Okay. So yeah, I have two cats by the way. Name is one is both of them are orange cats. So you can see, yeah, they're pretty crazy. Yeah. Okay, so my early days is I've been a tech enthusiast since I was young, and I've also used Windows 98 and Windows XP. So you can guess how old I am. Yeah, I was born on 1996. So I've used Windows 98 and Windows XP. Okay, so it's pretty old operating system. And one thing that I learned about when using these old OSs is that the back in those days, right? If you want to download something on the internet, you have to be very careful. So basically, I was super young, and that was my family's PC. So I tried downloading. Back in those days, there was a new game called Counter Strike. I tried downloading that game from the internet, and yeah, my family PC went into BSOD, which means blue screen of death. Okay, so yeah, that was the last time that my dad actually let me use the internet. Yeah. So, all right. So what I do here at Sigma Lab. So basically, I am a software engineer as well as a tech lead. So as a full stack developer or as a software engineer, my day-to-day task includes creating apps and APIs and also creating documentations. Okay. And as a tech lead, I have to make sure the team is moving in the right direction. So if there's anything that they don't understand or they are having trouble with, I would be actually helping them, right? And secondly, I also do code reviews and quality testing. So before we launch applications into production, before we let customers use these apps, I have to make sure that they are good enough and yeah, assign people to test and what to expect. Okay, so when testing something, we have to have a guidelines so that it works as expected. Okay, because people might not know how to test and they might not know how to report errors. Okay, so last but not least is DevOps. So DevOps essentially means that I set up like a CI/CD, which means continuous integrations and continuous deployments. So for example, we have a bug in production. Okay, so on the sigmaschool.co website, we have a typo, right? And it needs to be fixed ASAP. So I mean, like, usually if we don't have a CI/CD integrated in, what's going to happen is that even after we fix the issue, right? Someone has to deploy it, of course, so that it reflects on the sigmaschool.co website, right? So that part where someone has to deploy is automated via the DevOps. So essentially, when someone push a code, it basically creates a new commit and then it will actually like automatically deploy to sigmaschool.co website. So there's no middleman involved, right? So essentially DevOps is like automating a lot of stuff. Okay. So yeah, basically that's my role. And yeah, let's move on. So the journey, how did I get here, right? So my journey is you may find it a bit interesting or a bit boring, depending on your taste. So yeah, let's start. So before, right, it was around 2014 or 13. Sorry, not 2013, 2014 and 15. I had just finished my high school, and yeah, I was trying to actually like explore my options, right? So I worked in many different jobs, and I had to save money for this laptop that I'm using. So this laptop has been with me for around 9 years already. Okay, so yeah, and it cost me around 4K at that time. So it was quite expensive. So I had to work around like 6 or 7 months to save that, yeah, amount. Yeah, so I work as a waiter, I work in mechanical shops, and yeah, so basically I do everything, right? So yeah, and eventually I get to a point where I felt that I had to do something. I can't, I can't stay like that forever, right? So I started exploring solo learn. That was my first actually like that was my I mean like I learned HTML CSS at solo learn. So basically it's a mobile app. So if you have a mobile phone, you go and to an app store or play store and then you search for solo learn. You will see that app at the top, and it's basically a community-based learning platform, right? It's a very basic app, right? So it's not. I mean, like you won't see a lot of advanced concept in there. It's just to teach HTML and CSS, right? And another thing is a free code camp, which I also use. And lastly is the Odin project, right? These are all available online, by the way, so you can learn for free, right? And probably free code camp and Odin project was the more advanced one than the solo learn, because solo learn is for basic. So I learned HTML, CSS from solo learn, and then I practiced JavaScript at free code camp. And lastly, the Odin project, right? So basically, that was my first step into programming, and I learned all of this from this laptop here, right? Yeah. So yeah, basically, when learning HTML and CSS, I didn't face much challenge because HTML and CSS is fairly easy, as you all know, right? It's quite straightforward. But when it comes to JavaScript or any new programming language, right, it's crazy hard, right? So yeah, so the hard parts the challenges that I face is I didn't know how to learn, okay, because I had no structure. I was alone all on the internet, and because internet is, I mean, like you can even find a free Harvard course online as well. So it's a very big place, and of course, me, not knowing any of these, I just started spamming everything that I can. I watched YouTube tutorials, I read Reddit, I read Medium. I mean, I learned everything. I have a collection of bookmarks, like over 1,000 or something like that. So it's quite crazy. And I didn't use any of these, right? Still, I haven't even read them. I still have to clean it up. So, and second thing is that the no mentors. So I had no mentors because I was all alone, right? I didn't have a courage to actually ask questions on Stack Overflow or Reddit or anything like that because my communication skill wasn't that good at that time. And the thing is that I lack on data structure and algorithms. So even though I learned JavaScript, I know the syntax, right? When it comes to actually solving those problems, I didn't know where to start. So that was the problem that that I faced, right? And fourth thing is, of course, relates to the data structure as well, no practice. So because like I lack on data structure and algorithm, I didn't know how to apply theoretical knowledge to the practical knowledge, right? So that was my struggle. And fifth thing is the no chat GPT or AI. So this is quite a big thing, of course, because nowadays you can pretty much learn quite easily, right? You can pretty much feed anything into chat GPT or an AI, and it will give you an answer straight up, right? Even your VS Code has a co-pilot as well, right? So pretty much when you are coding something and you will put something, it gives you an autocomplete. So you don't have to code everything, right? So nowadays, much easier to code than it used to. So, and the final thing is the imposter syndrome. Now, what is an imposter syndrome, right? So basically, an imposter syndrome is when you feel like a fraud, for example, right? Because I was a self-taught developer, I didn't know I didn't have a I didn't go to a college or university to learn all this stuff, right? So I had this kind of like a syndrome where I feel like if I were to ask a question, if I were being asked a question, let's say like how do you, let's say like solve me a binary tree, I didn't know that because I didn't have CS principles or anything like that. So, but there was the thing is that because I lack on data structure and algorithm, right? It's not due to my imposter syndrome or anything like that. So it's because I didn't have enough practice. So that was the challenge, right? So basically, how I solved the challenge is by actually practicing. Okay. Now you can learn, of course, you can pretty much learn anything every day, every single day. You can watch YouTube tutorials, you can read a lot, but if you don't have enough practice, then it's worthless, right? So if you look at the chart here, right, I only read 10%. Okay. Now the reason why is that like once you read something, okay, you will understand it, of course, right? Because it's in simple English. But do you know how to apply that, right? So in order to make use of your knowledge, you have to practice it. So I put my time into projects more and also the algorithms. And lastly is the networking. So the networking is obviously for job search on LinkedIn, Indeed, and all these other jobs matching platform, right? So that's not important in here, but the important part is that if you look at the algorithms and the projects one, it's where I put most of my time in, right? So yeah, don't read a lot, actually practice a lot. So once you practice, you learn everything, right? So yeah. Okay, so how I transition into workforce, right? Like even though I learn all these by myself, it's still not good enough, of course, because like I remember at around 2017, I know JavaScript, I know HTML, I know CSS. I didn't know React or Vue or anything of any of those framework back then. So yeah, I tried going into an interview. It was on, it's an online interview. Yeah. So basically, they asked me a lot of interview questions like solve algorithm challenge, this and that. Bunch of traditional interview questions, right? And I didn't solve any of that. So yeah, basically, because I lack on those skills, right? So yeah, so how I transition into the workforce is because via the community. Okay, like even though you can pretty much find search for jobs online nowadays, you still need let's say like a community-based platform. Okay, and I went to this free coding bootcamp called Recode, and that's where I met Derek actually. And Derek and I actually learned together back in days. It's in COVID era, so 2020. Yeah. So like we had to wear masks all the time, right? At that time. So yeah, and Derek and I actually we were learning Ruby at that time. You know Ruby? You guys know Ruby on Rails. Yeah, Ruby. It's a interesting programming language. Interesting, very interesting programming language. Yeah, but it's not being used by, like it's used by a lot of other companies, but it's not as popular as JavaScript. So yeah, and we learned Ruby, and that bootcamp was super intense, I would say. It's very, very intense. And yeah, so basically, at first, there were around 30 people. And by the time we finished our capstone project, there was only 6 people. So you can pretty much have 24 people dropped out. Yeah. So it's and Derek and I was one of them. So we actually managed to solve a capstone project together, and yeah, it was a quite interesting journey. And Derek is actually, yeah. So by after we finished the bootcamp, and I made some friends along the way as well, right? So that's how I got connections. And Derek introduced me to his partner called Ming. And yeah, so back then we started working on it together. I joined their startup, and basically, yeah, basically that's how you can actually, like, how do I say this, like, build connections, right? So even though the bootcamp is like, I mean, like, it's not, unlike a traditional university, you can actually make friends and then build connections, right? So the key thing here is that the um, don't use bootcamp just for learning or practicing, right? Make friends and make connections. That's how you can actually, like, because if you actually, like, Google this, right? People gets hired by networking, right? And I mean, like, no matter how many skills you have, if you don't have a one person in that place, then I mean, like, they're gonna test your skill anyway, right? Of course, they're gonna, yes, test your skill either way. But the point is that you have to. It's better to have connections up, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the algorithm. And all right. So for the algorithm one, I'm gonna be actually showing you a simple algorithm demo, and I want you guys to give me honest answers as well. How would you solve it? Okay. This is gonna be very interesting.
It's just an algorithm to the final research.
Okay. 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 So how, I mean, like, this is just simple tips and tricks, which you may find helpful or you may not. No judgment here. So step one is to understand the problem. If you don't understand the problem, how are you gonna solve it, right? And second thing is to identify. Now, identify is to identify what your input and what your output is going to be. So I'm talking about in the programming sense here. That's why I mentioned inputs and outputs, right? And step three is to break it down into smaller steps. Solving an algorithm, you can't just solve it in one giant code right here. You have to step by step break it down, right? So basically, try breaking it down in a language that you understand. You don't have to use English. You can just write it in whichever language you feel comfortable. And step four is to write pseudocode. Now, does any of you know what pseudocode is? Correct, right? So basically, pseudocode is similar to step three, but in English, and you basically translate into an English, and you write it step by step on how you solve it. Okay. Now, pseudocode is very useful before you write your code. Okay. Usually, like, if I give some task to a junior, I would provide him a pseudocode. So that way, he has some idea on what he needs to do first and what steps he needs to follow. Okay. And lastly is to actually start writing code. So by using these 5 steps, you can pretty much solve any algorithm. Okay. Now I can show you a demonstration here. So let's take this challenge, 7 boom challenge. Does anyone of you familiar with this challenge? Okay, just try reading this, right? Make sure you understand the question, yeah? Make sure you understand the question.
So digit meaning if it's 107, then it will say boom.
Correct. Even if it says 017, which 0 you cannot put it in. Yeah, it's still boom.
If there is 2 sevens, it will say boom boom or just say boom.
Just say boom. Just one time.
B means C class.
Yeah, so understand the questions, yeah? So basically the question that, so let's go back to step 1, right? Make sure you understand the question. So we just, understood the question. So yeah, step 1, understand the question. And what was the question? The question was, we are given an array of numbers and we need to check if any of those numbers contains the digit 7. If they do, we return boom. Otherwise, we return there is no 7 in the array. So that's the first step, and we just did it. Okay, now step 2, identify. Now identify the inputs and the outputs. Okay, so what would the inputs and the output be based on the what you understood? Yeah.
You need to identify the number 7 inside there.
Correct.
And the number 7 is there.
Right. So the input would be an array, and the output would be a string, right? A words sentence, right? Yeah. So inputs and output would be an array of numbers, and output would be a string. So that's how you identify the problem. So what's my input and what's the expected output, right? So that's the thing. Now step 3 is to what? Break it down, right? Now break it down means that you have to dance or something like that, right? So it's gonna be how would you solve the challenge? Okay. And first thing is what's the what I mean, like let's try to break it down bit by bit. Okay, what's the first step that you need to do in order to solve this challenge? The first thing that you need to do. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like coding in programming terms. It can be in any terms that you understand. It can just be a simple English. Yeah. Oh. Oh, I can see.
Oh, okay.
Input is an array of now, output is a loop array, write a function. Okay, write a function is one thing. Yeah.
Any other function that has a for loop or something that goes through the area.
Yep. And what about the checking part? How would you check?
It will be a condition.
Okay.
If a number at the same is 7 and console of else.
All right. So let's see. Okay. So we have 3 steps, and that's how you break it down. We first convert, turn an array into string. Now, the reason why I'm not using a loop here is that to save the, to optimize it. Okay. And turn an array into a string. Basically, there's a method in JavaScript that lets you convert an array into a string. Okay. And step 2 is to check. Look for the digit 7 in the converted string. And third is to return. So if a 7 is found, we return boom. If not, then we return there's no 7 in the array. So it's correct, right? So that's how you break it down. And if you look at it, it's very simple step. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's a simple English. Just put it in however you understand it, right? It doesn't have to be always right. You don't have to follow the best practice or anything like that. It's just to break it down in however you understand it. Yeah. So basically, that's 3 steps here. Now, step 4 is to write the pseudocode. Now, the pseudocode is, as I explained before, it's a programming language translated into a simple English. Okay. So if you look at it, we convert the. You can base your pseudocode from your step 3 as well. If you look at it, they're very similar. Convert the array of numbers to string and check if the string contains the digit 7. If you find a 7, return boom. If no 7 is found, return there is no 7 in the array. Now, if you look at the pseudocode compared to break it down here, it's very similar. Okay. Now, the only difference is that the pseudocode can literally be translated into a programming language just by following each step. Okay. Now let's look at the code here. And if you look at the code, convert to string, we take an input here, the numbers, and then numbers to string, which is step 1 here. Convert the arrays of the number into string. Check if the string contains the digit number 7. There we go. Right? If convert to string dot includes 7, that's number 2. Pseudocode step 2. 3, we return boom. We say, if you find a 7, return boom. Step 3 already. Lastly, step 4, if number 7 is found, return there is no 7 in the array, which is the last step here. So it's literally taking each step here and then translating it into a coding programming language. So yeah, you can call it a translator or whatever. The pseudocode is a translator anyway, right? So it translates from English to programming language. Yeah. So yeah, once you run the, once we run the test case here, we can see that it works. So the step 1, the first one pass, boom. Second also pass, boom. Third one doesn't have 7. There is no 7 in the array, and boom. Okay, so all right, so I've reached the end goal already. Let me just go back here. Okay, so the end goal is going to be a bit long. Wait, let me read the chats. Okay. Focus only on one thing. Okay. Remember, the tech industry is always evolving. So we try to focus only on one thing. Okay. And learn to focus on one thing and be super good at it. So, and do not be afraid to make mistakes, and do not underestimate data structure and algorithm. Have a clear roadmap to achieve your end goals. I'll explain each step one by one. So the first one is that remember, tech industry is always evolving. Now, what does it mean, right? It means it's always changing. It does not end. Okay, so you have to keep up with everything, and every day you have to learn every day. There's a new framework, right, coming out every day. So it's faster than COVID, I would say. Yeah. So and learn to focus on one thing and be super good at it. So basically what I mean is that instead of learning multiple programming languages, right, and be super good at their syntax or anything like that, try to stick to one language and be good at it. You can pretty much learn C, C hash, C, C sharp, or even .NET framework. Really, there's thousands of programming languages, right? But if you know all of these, right, and let's say like you were given a task to solve in one particular language, you know too many languages already, you can solve it in any language, but if you don't know if you don't master enough language, just one language, you wouldn't be good in any of it. Okay, that's how I know, because even though I know JavaScript, right? I know JavaScript. If you give me one task in Python, right, I wouldn't be able to do it. Now, the reason why is because I didn't learn Python at all. I didn't know Python at all. And if you give me same task, but in JavaScript, then yeah, I can do it. Yeah. Now, the reason why is because, it's just a programming language anyway. So you can learn at the end of the day, but it does waste you a lot of time if you try to learn. Or instead, when you can achieve, because programming language try to solve one particular problem, right? So they all do, achieve your goal at the end of the day. But it's just that, yeah, which language are you good at, right? And do not be afraid to make mistakes. Now, of course, this one is self-explanatory. As a programmer, right, when you first come into this industry, you will always make mistakes, and that's fine, right? That's super fine. Now, I don't know if your boss tells you, let's say, like, hey, you made mistake and this is not good enough, you're fired. yeah, then that's not a good post for you. You know what I mean? Yeah, basically as a programmer, even doctors make mistakes, right? Now, of course, that's not the same thing because when doctor makes mistakes, they actually kill people, right? Yeah. So, but ours, we don't even kill people or anything like that. It's just that, it shows some bugs here and there. So, yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes unless you're a doctor. Yeah. And do not underestimate data structure and algorithms. Now, what I mean is that because I experienced this already, right? When I first started learning, I didn't practice um, data structure or algorithms enough, and I suck at it. Right when I first applied jobs, they asked me all of these questions, algorithms and data structure. I didn't know how to start. It was super embarrassing. Yeah. So yeah, don't make the mistake that I made, right? So do not underestimate data structure and algorithms. Now I'll give you some tips on how you can improve your data structure and algorithms in the next slide. And lastly is to have a roadmap to achieve your end goals. You can go to this roadmap.sh website and you can see, like where you are at currently and what you want to be, and stick to it. Stick to it, right? Don't go jumping around between full stack, backend, front end, and data scientist, data analyst, or whichever, right? Pick one roadmap and then achieve it first. Okay, make sure that you achieve it to the end. Make sure you reach to the end. Then only you pick another roadmap. Okay, so for example, let's say like I'm a beginner and I want to be a full stack developer. Okay, now do I just go ahead and start learning like Node.js without learning JavaScript or anything like that, or do I just start learning Express, right, without even knowing basic JavaScript? You shouldn't do that, right? So obviously, is to actually pick a roadmap. Let's say like in order to become a full stack developer, you need to become a front end developer first, right? So pick that roadmap and then achieve it to the end. Then you become a backend. Now, if you combine these two, you're already a full stack developer, right? Now, of course, if you want to be good at DevOps side, you can also choose that career as well. Yeah. Now, how do you practice algorithm, right? Basically, these are the sites that I use. I use LeetCode, I use HackerRank, I use EtherBit, and yeah, there are many challenges. They are also interview focused as well. Yeah, and LeetCode is very good community, right? Meanwhile, for the HackerRank, you get job opportunities and you get certificate. These, like LeetCode and HackerRank are super good as well. And lastly is the EtherBit, which is a beginner friendly, and they have a simple and fun challenges. Okay, so yeah, so I have this table here that shows you how if you are a beginner, what you should practice on. So for algorithm, if you're a beginner, you just learn. You just practice using EtherBit because their challenges are fairly simple and fun. So you won't get bored, and you will be able to solve it in like 5 minutes or 10, right? And if you're an intermediate and you want to take it to the next level, go to HackerRank. Try to enter their contest because they do held contests every month or something like that. So yeah. And lastly is if you are advanced, and this is going to be LeetCode. Now, I haven't used LeetCode at all. I use HackerRank, but yeah, if you want to, you can go ahead and try it and let me know how your feedback is. Because I'm scared that, because when I first entered a contest in HackerRank, and I think it was around 2018 or 17, and yeah, I was placed at last. So, so yeah, like you learn along the way, and projects for the beginner one, go to bootcamp, pick one of their projects. They have a lot of fun projects as well. Portfolio. There's also algorithm challenges as well. You can practice your UI, front end skills as well using React framework. And for intermediate, you go straight to GitHub. Okay. Now, the reason why I recommend GitHub is because these are actual projects there. Those are actual projects used by real users. And there's a lot of open source projects in there. Okay. Now, the open source projects are like like you can pretty much see the code, right? Open source means that you can pretty much see the source code, and you can make changes to it. You can even write the documentation. You can see how they actually work in those tech industry. So GitHub is actually a very, very good place to learn, right? If you don't have an account, create one and start exploring GitHub already, right? And debugging. Now, debugging is, of course, if you have an error in your code, how do you solve it? Well, you Google it, of course, first, right? If you're a beginner, and if you're intermediate, you just chat GPT it, or if you're advanced, advanced means that if you cannot find a solution at all, you just go to Stack Overflow, right? Now, the reason I put Google as a beginner and intermediate like ChatGPT as intermediate is because even though, as a beginner, you can ask ChatGPT to debug your code, it doesn't always mean that it's going to give you the right answer. Now, the reason why is, AI can hallucinate, right? Meaning that if you compare let's say like I have this error, right? Where I assign a variable that problem in somewhere in your code or something like that. But if you go and Google this problem, then because they are answered by real people who actually faced this problem before, because these are from real people, right? And yeah, you are pretty much safe, right? You can apply that solution to your problem. So yeah, that's why I put Google in the first place. And another reason that I put Google for beginner is because start practicing how to Google already, right? So at the end of the day, it's just that AI is still AI. It's not human at all, right? So it's just an LLM, right? Yeah. And for the reading, we have a Medium and Reddit. Yeah, you can pretty much read anything from there. And for intermediate, GitHub, right? Because GitHub actually publishes a lot of blogs, and also they have this academy thing where you can learn where you can learn new languages and new frameworks by practicing with the projects. Okay, so GitHub actually got like if you Google GitHub Academy, there's actually a lot of courses there you can learn for free. Yeah. Okay, so here is the tech stacks that I use. And right now, because like at Sigma Lab, this is the tech stack that we use, right? We use React and React Native. So React is for web apps and React Native is for the mobile apps. And we don't use REST API, we use GraphQL. And we also use serverless functions. We use TypeScript, we use Postgres, we use Google Cloud, right? So I'm just going to simply explain what a GraphQL API is. REST API, the difference between REST API and GraphQL API is that the GraphQL is more versatile. So which means that you can customize how many data you want, and you can also like filter accordingly, right? If it's supported by the backend, of course. Now, not to say that it's not possible in REST API, it's just that it takes a lot of time to add these features in REST API, right? Meanwhile, GraphQL is if we are building an app where we will be making multiple API calls to the backend, and we want to, of course, optimize it, right? Because when making multiple API calls to the server, yeah, it's going to receive a lot of requests from the front end. And let's say like one front end receive 10 requests to the back end. Then 10 front end means 100 requests already. So it's going to be exponential, right? So with the GraphQL API, we can actually like combine that into just one big query. Now, of course, this depends, right? This depends. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes you don't want to do that, of course. And with the GraphQL API, the subscription is also supported, meaning that if you are building, let's say, like a real-time application, such as like a chat app, there's this web socket thing that it supports. So you can pretty much build like a chat app, yeah, instantly. Now, of course, it needs to be set up on the server side, yeah. So React and React Native for the front end, and GraphQL for the back end, and of course TypeScript. TypeScript for everything here, right? So anything JavaScript will be replaced with TypeScript. TypeScript is a subset of JavaScript. It's not another new language or anything like that. So it's just a simple subset of JavaScript, because JavaScript is dynamically typed language, right? You cannot specify the types. So sometimes when a big application, it tends to produce a lot of problems. It's like, let's say like I accidentally assign a string, a variable that initially has a value of string, right, to a number, and then I try converting it to back to, let's say, like a number, then it's gonna be a problem already, right? Because I'm trying to, I mean, like, it's just that it's not good enough already, right? It causes memory leaks and all these other unknown problems in the background, yeah. And for the PostgreSQL, this is a database. This is a MySQL-based database. Postgres is the advanced version of MySQL, and it's much faster. And I mean, like, not to say much faster than MySQL. It's much faster than NoSQL databases. Yeah. So MySQL is still a lot faster, right? But the reason I like MySQL, SQL to be specific, right, compared to NoSQL is because I can actually see I can actually work with the schema directly, and I won't have any problems with unknown fields or anything like that. Because NoSQL is a JSON-like structure, which means that you can have multiple fields in there, right? But with the Postgres and SQL, you don't have that problem. Yeah. And lastly is the Google Cloud. We host everything on Google Cloud. So including the front end, the back end, the serverless functions, and everything. So all of our tech stack, all of the application, you go to sigmaschool.co, it's on Google Cloud. If you go to the API that it uses, the backend one, yeah, it's on Google Cloud. So everything is on Google Cloud. And yeah, so pretty much that's the tech stack that I use. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask as well. Yeah. All right, so I think that's about it. Let me check the questions. Okay. All right, so here's a picture of my cat, the Honorable Butter Boo. Yeah, so it's a orange cat, as you can see here. And I have two cats, actually. I wanted to put two pictures there, but it's not enough screen. So as you can see here, this is my cat, okay? And he's around 2 years old, actually 1.5 years old. And it's a stray cat. I found it on street. And yeah, so that's my co-pilot. Yeah. He can, actually, he can. Yeah. All right. So Q&A, any questions that you may have, you can ask it right now. I think we still have some time left, so feel free to ask. I also put a few resources here that you can use. So if you look at this link, my early projects, this is where actually, am I sharing my screen? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so these are my early projects. So if you look at it, yeah, it's my profile. And yeah, a lot of projects that I did. It's a lot of them are unnamed. And yeah, so basically I built a tic-tac-toe game back in those days. And yeah, and the funny thing is that the CPU one, you can actually play as a single player or multiplayer. Okay, and I'll show you the description that I put. It was around 2017, or I think, if I remember. Actually, it isn't. Yeah, I think they removed it already. But anyway, let's see how smart my CPU is, right? So choose I'm X and the CPU is O. So let's go, right? Okay. So it didn't pick the middle one. Yeah, you can see that how easy it is to win, right? Against this CPU. And it's just picking random squares. Yeah. So here, yeah, every time you win, right? It doesn't block anything. Oh, now it blocks. Okay, now it blocks. Yeah. But it's unpredictable, right? So you can see this is my early projects. Feel free to copy any of these. Yeah, so there's this Pomodoro clock. And back in that day, I was obsessed with the material design. You guys know material design? I think you know already, right? Yeah. Yeah, Google design, the paper design. I was super obsessed with that design. Actually, I liked it a lot. Yeah. So that's why you see a lot of material design. Yeah, you hate it, huh? Yeah. So as you can see,
I have a question.
yeah.
We have worked with other developers, right? What are some traits or things that good developers do that you can work with?
Okay. So basically, the good developers actually, yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, right? Good developers actually are humble than the, how do I say this, inexperienced developers, and they do ask questions as well. If let's say, like, if I don't know anything, if I didn't know, I mean, like, if I didn't know a solution to that problem, I should just say I didn't know, right? And I should try to find a solution for it as well. But few developers that I experience is most of the inexperienced ones. They're like, I know this already. My way is the only correct one. Yeah. So, I mean, like, sometimes it may be correct, but sometimes it may. I mean, like, there's a way to optimize your code as well. You have to remember, right? So if you solve one algorithm and your algorithm, I mean, like, your solution is very heavy on CPU performance, then it's not a best solution at all. You can, of course, further optimize it, right? So that's, yeah. So I think that's the key thing here. Be humble and also ask questions. So any other questions? Does the junior have time to learn from videos, documentation during working hours? Of course. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just that you can pretty much learn wherever you want, whenever you want. But it's just that try to make also some time to practice that knowledge. Yeah. Can give a link to your project. Oh, sure. This is from my code pen. And you can also find a few more projects on my GitHub as well. Okay, so just asking, what was the hardest coding challenge project you have ever faced? Okay, now this is a very good question. Actually, the hardest challenge that I face is called vending machine problem. Now, does any of you know what that problem is? No? No. Okay, I'm gonna briefly explain how it works. So I'm sure you guys have used vending machines all over the place, right? Now, some vending machines returns changes, but some doesn't, right? Now, most of the time, I mean, like the vending machines that return changes are hard to find, right? Most of these are like you put exact change or you pay by card. That's it, right? So it was an algorithm challenge. It's called vending machine problem, and the problem was asking if let's say like there's a water bottle in that vending machine and it costs, let's say like 55 cents, 55 cents, okay? And you put a $1 there, put one note, how much should it return? 45, right? Now, can you and you have a points of, let's say like 20 coins, 20 cent, 30 cent, 10 cent, and 5 cent. Okay. Now, can you return that 45 cent in the smallest amount of coins as possible? Smallest amount, yeah. So in that case, 45 will become 20, 20, and 5. Because you only have I mean like 20 or 20 cents in that machine, 10 cents, 5 cents, right? Yeah. So yeah, that was the problem. And if you Google that problem, I can actually show you. It's probably the hardest one that I face. Yeah, the vending machine change problem, this one. Yeah. So try reading this and you can understand the problem here. It's a recursive function. This one here. You can also read this. Okay, there's another question. If you get to restart back your coding journey, what would you do differently? What language would you learn first? And who is the best teacher in your opinion on YouTube? Okay. I'm gonna say Harris. No lah. Okay, so if you get to restart your, so things I would do differently is I would spend more time on algorithm and data structure, and of course, actually make use of AI. Yeah, actually make use of AI. And yeah, so basically, if you remember, right, when I first started learning, I used Grammarly, if you know Grammarly. Yeah, the one where you can actually like check your grammar and if you are writing an essay or something like that. I tried using Grammarly as a coding instructor. Yeah, but it didn't work, of course. Yeah, so I was that desperate for AI. Yeah, if I had someone to actually like, to debug with, right? So yeah, nowadays I think that AI is a big thing. So you can pretty much learn anything, and it's much easier to learn coding as well. Not to say that it's because if it was a easy skill, then everybody would have done that, right? It still takes a lot of like dedication and time to do it as well. Yeah. And what language would you learn first? I think it's still JavaScript, I would say, because JavaScript is still a popular language as it was before. And yeah, I think pretty much you can now do everything with JavaScript nowadays. You can build web apps. You can also build progressive web apps. And you can also build mobile apps with JavaScript, React Native, right? Yeah. Huh? AI, no. I think there's a TensorFlow you can use as a framework. Yeah. You can also use a Hugging Face as well. Yeah. And who is the best teacher in your opinion? Yeah, actually, I mean, like I didn't use YouTube a lot back in those days, but if I remember one YouTuber that I used to watch is it's called the Net Ninja. I'm not sure whether the Net Ninja. Yeah, it's I think he's a Scottish English guy, right? Scottish or English, I don't know. His accent is very funny. Yeah, the Net Ninja. Yeah. So this is the YouTuber. And he explains a lot of the concept very, very simple and easy to understand. Very good guy. Yeah. He's still making a lot of like YouTube. Yeah. Still teaching. I think he's also a programmer. Yeah. And also, if you you can also subscribe to Happy Harris, if I remember, right? Happy Harris. Oh no, not this guy. What? Sorry. Maybe someone has taken your username. I don't know. Maybe Harris has changed his passion.
What about like during technical interviews? How much time do you usually give, and how do you usually like ace that technical interview? Because you do technical interviews with candidates before, right?
With who?
Candidates. Like,
Oh yes. Okay. So are you talking about like from an interviewer perspective or interviewee? Tips to the interviewee. Okay, how to ace it? Yeah, actually, just don't overdo it, a lot of things. And one thing that I mean, like as a when I interview someone, right? The question that I ask is, I mean, I do not ask a lot on the traditional interview questions, like how do you sort this tree? How do you sort this array? Blah blah blah. All these. I mean, these are not practical use. I mean, like in real world, would you actually like build a project or build an app based on that? No, right? So the thing that I like to ask them is the actual contributions to the actual projects. So things like, let's say like I give you an app, a web app, and it has an error when you click that button, right? How would you solve it? Okay. Now, sorry, what?
How do you debug it?
Yeah, you will need to debug it in front of me. Because most of the time, some developers, what they will do is they will actually like, like didn't know what to do, proceed. But the one thing that I expect the developers who know what is to actually open up a console and then try to look for an error. Now understand that error, Google it. If you don't, I mean, like if you understand it straight away, then of course you'll be able to fix it. If you don't Google it, try Googling it. There's nothing wrong with Googling. Yeah, once you Google it and you couldn't find a solution, yeah, you can ask AI in that case. Or if AI doesn't give you a proper answer, then it's not your code anymore. It's somewhere has to do with the backend or whatever, right? Maybe I mean like this is a very new. I mean that's like very rare cases. Like out of 1 million case, you would experience this one time. Yeah, so something like that. Because all these errors, someone has faced this before. You're not the first one, right? Yeah. So I think is basically how I would structure an interview. And to the tips to the interviewee is to actually like practice on the real world projects instead of, I mean, like you can of course I that doesn't mean that I don't ask algorithm questions at all. I still ask them. Let's say like I ask them, for example, let's say like a simple algorithm questions. Of course, I won't ask like a vending machine problem or anything like that, right? It's too hard. Yeah, but simple ones. So, for example, reverse a string. Now, everyone should be able to, I mean, like do it, right? Because if you don't know it, then yeah, no, no, right? I mean, like, it's a very basic question. So as a programmer, it's like 1 + 1 what, right? 2. So that kind of questions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So any further questions?
what do you think of the current job market for engineers who work with developers?
Yeah, you heard a lot of bad things, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for now, I think it's not as in high demand as it used to be. That's my honest opinion. Okay. Because back in the COVID era, there was a lot of high demand for software engineer jobs. And yeah, and the reason is that it's due to it's part of the AI as well. And second thing is that you can still get hired, of course, right? You can still get hired. Now, how do you actually maximize your chance, right? One thing that I mentioned, remember in the earlier slides, that actually make a connections with people, right? Try making connection instead of just randomly applying on LinkedIn or Indeed, right? Try to actually make some friends and then get connections from them, right? You can actually, you will be most likely to get hired by doing that. So yeah, I think I would say just keep making connections. Yeah, that's my thing. And also have a GitHub profile that you can showcase at any time. Maybe you know what? Actually build a portfolio as well on your website so that you can actually straight away give it to the people without having to, oh, let me bring my laptop, see my thing is so it's not. So actually buy a domain is very cheap. Actually, I think you can pretty much get it for 50 ringgit per year or something like that, and buy a domain, make a really impressive portfolio, right? A website, and then add your projects there, add your resume there, add everything that relates to your information, your emails, your name, your picture, your cat pic, your dog pic, whatever, right? And then you start applying. Okay, that way I think it's you can actually you have what you just did. Basically you made these employers know your online presence, right? Yeah. So for example, this guy here, right, the cat, he didn't have any portfolios back in my days. Back in days, yeah, I now he has pictures all over the internet. He's not a celebrity or anything like. It's just that in my portfolio. Yeah.